you doing today, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Listen, I really want to start with a sincere congrats on your short because I don't think people really realize making a short film is like next to impossible because you have to accomplish so much in such a short period of time. So
Yeah,
I'm curious, when you were thinking about directing and writing and doing something like this, was it almost like a feature might be easier?
absolutely. Well, I think I definitely figured that out as soon as we got into production. A feature would, in a lot of ways, be easier from a really kind of practical side. People don't want to give money to something that doesn't have a clear return on investment, and on the creative side too, cinematographers or actors, are like, why would I, do this instead of keep my schedule open for something else? So it's really for the love of the game, and then especially when you're trying to make something that's a bit larger as a short, so from the practical side, it's fairly insane and sort of dumb, but it was really gratifying. And I just felt, I wrote this piece and I just felt like it wanted to be made and I wanted to make it. And I felt that I experimented with what it would be as a feature. It didn't feel right to have it be a feature. I just wanted to sort of be this short story. And then I, am really, really happy. And I got very lucky with being able to make it and learned a lot. So now that I'm working now on what will be the first feature, which is an entirely different story, but I've been through the entire process on a scale that's sort of closer to like a micro budget feature and know the lay of the land a little bit more and feel more confidence in going into that kind of world.
So for people, when are people going to be able to see it? Because I'm sure they'll be. We're going to, you know what I mean.
Well, what I want to do is we're doing the whole festival run now, and then what I want to do is release it as a film. So, like in music, they'll release a single sometimes with some of the same pomp and circumstance that they'll release an album at this point. And in this world, like these divisions of length and how it doesn't really matter, certainly in a streaming universe. So my goal is to continue to do the circuit that we're on now and then explore distribution and figure out, what the best home for it is and really release it and do more press like this and get people to see it. But that'll probably, there's rules around, you can't have it available online until you get, there's it's stuff that I don't entirely understand, but it won't be available until we sort of do the whole circuit.
So I hate saying this, but no one has seen the film yet. And how have you been describing it to like friends and family?
I describe it. It's a film about the older brother of this young movie star who's a musician who's failed in his career so far, who's having a really hard time and is down and out, coming back to the family home on the day of his younger brother's movie premiere, kind of big break, and he's back channeling with the paparazzi to steal the younger brother's computer and sell it to them. But that's the plot. What it's kind of emotionally about is the relationships between people who love each other when success and ego get in the way.
Sure. One of the things that the short does really well is build up tension very quick. And I'm curious, how much did you realize, were you going for that kind of tension? And what was it like in the editing room when you have such a short period of time to establish emotions like this?
It's very challenging. And what I learned in the editing room is actually that less was more in terms of this piece when it came time to the emotional material. It was easier to like lose some of the detail and some of the content inside the scenes. It helped the actual emotional subtext of what was happening land even more strongly. And then when it comes to the tension, I have kind of a pet thing about, I love character driven movies. That's my whole bag. It's like movies about human beings. That's really where my passion is. And I feel strongly that with the audiences today and the attention spans that exist, it impels storytellers who want to make character driven films, dramas, to get better at storytelling that grabs people, you know. Often it can kind of feel like this polarized thing where there's character driven movies that require a lot of patience and require a lot of, you know, sort of people who are already interested in that thing, or you go to a genre, you know, and you work along these rails, which can be wonderful. But the movies that I grew up loving, really, and I think even more so, we just need to find a way, storytellers who want to tell things about people. I think there's a way to do that without sort of Trojan horsing it into a genre. If you just get really on top of great storytelling structure and compelling narrative and things that feel like real to people. So I'm learning what that process is in that craft, but that's where having this be a very tense piece comes in, and having you want to know what's going to happen next.
So one of the things is, I think it's about 15 minutes. How much did you debate the runtime in terms of, like, no, were you aiming at 15? Were you thinking maybe I want to be 9 or 10 minutes? Like, how did you figure that out?
The original script was 28 pages, and I was living in a world of, this is going to be a 30-minute film, and I'm going to have to just eat. Again, it's like making a short on a big scale. It's dumb, but I was like, this is what the movie wants to be. This is what I have to do. It's totally impractical when it comes to trying to get into festivals and doing stuff like that. And then in the edit, we just found that it was like, everyone was like, God, if you could get it more toward 15, it'd be so much easier to submit it, and it's so much easier to send out, and it'd be so great. And I was like, great, happy to hear that, but it's not going to happen. And then the editor, this is why it's great to have great editors, not with that in mind, but just for the purposes of making the story work, found, you know, a whole host of things to cut that I would have never imagined being okay with cutting, but they brought the essence of the story out even more.
Yeah, it's so funny. So did you feel like you were killing darlings, or did you feel like, oh, actually, yeah, this can just go?
There was one where I watched it and I was like, if this editor had told me he was going to cut this, it was a whole dialogue section, I would be like, this isn't the guy for me. You know, I'm not going to hire him. And when he did it and I watched it, I went, that motherfucker, he's, you know, he was totally right. And it made the movie work. And it was just, you know, it was a great learning experience. I wrote the film originally as a oneer. And then I was
going crazy, all in.
Yeah, it was nuts. But I was luckily talked out of that strongly. I also fought that. And then obviously that was the best thing that ever happened. But, you know, the flow of it kind of stayed, you know, the sense that you're stuck with this guy moving through this space fairly in real time. Yeah.
So a lot of people debate, especially, I mean, a lot of people debate what they're going to do as an actor for their first feature, short, whatever they're going to direct for the first time. So how much did you debate what the material was going to be in terms of the subject matter for my first effort? And, you know, was it almost something else?
Sure. I mean, I'm always working on a lot of different pieces, you know, between acting work or even while I'm doing acting work, I'm developing a lot of different stories. And what I'm always looking for is the thing that there's just kind of a magic little click that sometimes happens where intuitively go, nah, this is the one. Other ones may be tempting. They may seem even easier, but this is the one. And I just have to see that out. I mean, that's my process right now with the first feature that I'm writing, or not the first feature I'm writing, but the feature that I'm writing that I'd like to be the first one I make. It's very challenging. It takes a long time, but I just intuitively sense that this is the one. And it was the same with this piece. It just was like, other things might even make more sense. Another feature like we talked about might make more sense, but there's an emotional resonance and there's just a way in which there's sort of a there. There's kind of you feel like these people, there's a world. And when you have to, it's very useful because when you sit down with the hair and makeup department and they say, what do the people, you know, look like? you can kind of almost ask the world that seems to almost exist, as opposed, and when you know that's there, it kind of can carry you through what is this incredibly labor intensive process of making something, bringing something into life.
You've worked with a lot of talented directors. I mean, a lot. And I'm sure that the whole time you were studying them, looking at lenses, because you obviously knew you wanted to do something like this. So what were some of the big lessons you took away from the directors you've worked with? They're really gifted directors that you're like, I'm stealing this, I'm stealing this, and I'm stealing this.
I mean, I have like notes on my phone, and it'll be directing and then parentheses and whatever the movie is. And it will be just, pages and pages of all the notes that I'm taking as an actor. A lot of them are do's, a lot of them are don'ts, and it can be really micro things, but I think that my first film was for Francis Ford Coppola. He did a really, he really emphasized the rehearsal process. And in that rehearsal process, we were experimenting, we were making fools out of ourselves. He understood on a deep level that actors needed to play and needed to have fun and needed to feel that they could make mistakes and feel safe. And so he facilitated this rehearsal process that, yes, helped us figure out where the scene wanted to be and practical things, but mainly it made us feel like a troupe, and it made it feel like the joy of being in a play in middle school. And that is really translates to the films. For all the seriousness and the gravitas of his films, at the heart of it are these great performances, and that comes more quickly out of that than it does out of these other environments. So rehearsal being really, really paramount to me, and then just about hundreds of thousands of other things I feel like I've picked up from all these people I've been so fortunate to be able to work for.
Speaking of Coppola, I see his name as an executive producer on the short.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how he got involved and what exactly he did to help facilitate the project?
Yeah, I sent it to him. I sent the script to him, and he was very supportive of it. He obviously really lit the spark of inspiration for me when I was 17, 18. And I wanted to do filmmaking then. I went up and interviewed him about filmmaking, and he sat and just this was like 10 years after I'd done Tetra, my first movie. And he was so generous, as always, with his thoughts and insights around all of that. And then he's watched the film a couple times and given me his impressions. And that was mainly it. It was more of an honorific than anything else, and means a lot that he, did that for me. It's very nice.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that I would be scared to show my movie to, and he would probably be at the top of the list.
So he's definitely up there. I spent the last week sending it off to these. It's like ludicrous, like the directors, that I'm sending this film to. It's very funny, but it's also, nice. It's like saying, hey, yeah. It's like being a kid and showing up to a family reunion or something, and you've grown up and you're going, hey, I'm an adult.
Yeah. I mean, also you're basically, it's like, your calling card to a different club, it's
yeah.
a completely different thing. So one of the things in the film is there's a blackmail situation with your brother's character. And I'm just curious, the amount of money you're being offered is $80,000. Is that based on a real number, or is that just like making it up as like, maybe that's what they pay?
No, I'm very research driven in everything. And so I had a conversation with someone who worked in that sort of world, making those deals in the paparazzi sort of back end side of those things, and talked to him about what the real numbers would be. And that's definitely on the high end, but it's not out of the realm of possibility for a really big star and for some real juicy stuff that could be it. And I wanted to make it a number, Cole needs $6,000 from his brother. And I wanted it to make it a number where we felt not that we wanted him to do it, but that we understood the magnitude of it. It's not like he's just it's not get the money from your brother or get the money from there. It's get the money from your brother or get so much more money that would change your whole life. Yeah. It's interesting to see how money numbers and figures play on screen with audiences. You really feel the amount of, when somebody says an amount of money in a movie, you really feel that in the room. It's interesting.
Well, the other thing is that, like, oftentimes in movies, they're dealing with millions of dollars or
Right.
End of the world, and it's like,
Right.
because of the character thing, it's $80,000. It's not it's not such a crazy number, but for
Right.
him, it's life changing.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
So talk a little bit about how you got the title, and did you ever debate with another title, like a one word? You know what I mean? Because the title's everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I always loved it. It functions. It's more poetic to me than anything else. I like that it almost sounds like Sunday, Bloody Sunday. I like that there was there's like a myth. I think maybe it's a Grimm's fairy tale or something about the snake brother, or something like that I had listened to, that I only retroactively realized had influenced this. But it was about, a brother who gets thrown out the window when he's born and turns into a snake. And then the younger brother, is brought into the house, and then the younger brother's going to get married. And this giant snake shows up and says, me before him. And so I mainly like I mainly like titles that work on kind of a poetic basis. I think that they add like Reservoir Dogs being always a great one to me, like that doesn't mean anything in the context of the film, but it adds this intangible quality to it.
So you shot on film and you worked with Ben Mullen as your DP. And I'm curious, how much did you debate film versus just using a red camera and saying, we're going to do it digitally?
It was always, that and the rehearsal were always the big ticket items that were non-negotiable for me. There was a world of maybe shooting 16, there was kind of, I wanted to shoot 35 anamorphic. And so we shot 35 spherical. And like, it's interesting. That's like something I'm really curious about. I want to do some more tests with 16 because it's interesting that there's a whole technical side of this, but it's interesting to see what they actually, with the color process, what those differences are, because there's such advanced color technology now. But more interestingly, film, to me, you feel the emotions of a film more when it's shot on film. It's a physical process. You're seeing the human beings, you're feeling the textures of the film. And that was everything in this. And it just wakes me up when I see something that's shot on film. And then I had worked with Christopher Nolan like right before I shot this. And I was like, if I don't do it now, if for some reason I don't shoot on film now, I'll be, disinvited from the premiere party. So it was it just is. Just love it. I love what it brings to things. And in an era where we're all seeing 1,000 digital images all day, it brings back a little of that old magic that film felt like when I was younger.
I understand digital. I understand the need for it. And I do think also a lot of people just don't admit or when you're shooting with no light and I look at what Gareth Edwards did with The Creator, and they used like a Best Buy camera that cost $3,000 to shoot at night with like a little LED, and they were able to shoot like a pitch black darkness. And obviously that's incredible, but that's a specific thing that you're going for, and the aesthetic of film it's incredible. But again, you couldn't, if you were shooting at night, it would be a different thing.
It'd be a totally different thing. And I do feel that there are Tangerine is more interesting for it being shot on the iPhone. Like there are places where that's in its own aesthetic, but I think it's about owning that aesthetic. And the thing that drives me crazy is seeing all these films that are now shot on with digital cameras, but are being lit like it's 1993. And you're looking at these actors in a fucking bookshop, and it's like it's like you can see the light. It's like so heavy-handed and it's so fake, especially character-driven movies. And so I just think the lighting practices there's just still a lot of like, well, we do this now. And it's like, no, you don't need anything. You get these cameras are so sharp. If you just put them in the room, like get the reel, why are we adding things, So anyway.
If you look at I was just having this conversation with someone. If you look at like early 90s or mid 90s romantic comedies or some of those movies that are like some that are not even that good, they're shot better than other movies.
Oh, absolutely.
It's
absolutely
bananas.
They look gorgeous. Yeah. And then you get things and you have all these people coming together and I think a big challenge for me, at least as a filmmaker, and I feel this more when I'm the actor and I don't have this say so, is getting people to do less. That applies in a huge way to acting, but it also applies to, I had a great hair and makeup team, Jackie Knowlton and Laurie Guidreau, who were like, if somebody shows up and their hair looks good, what are we doing? Let's not fuck with it. Or if we go into a room and there's light coming in the window, how much do we really need to add to that? And being able to exercise that restraint and not do well, I'm being paid, so I better do my job. And then you just get these films that end up feeling like bad TV movies or something. So anyway.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I don't think of it. That's a different perspective. You're coming in from a different perspective, but anyway, I am curious. So you're writing a feature right now. Can you tease anything, or is it like, are you just going to be like, I'm writing a feature?
All I could say really is that it's thematically and tonally sort of along some of the same lines. Show business and family is very central to it. I would say the comedy of it is bigger and the drama of it is darker. So the colors are all the same, but they're a little more heightened in both directions. And other than that, I'm just, in a cave wrestling with making this thing happen. It's really a fascinating process. That's,
I totally get it. One of the things, though, nowadays with like a talking drama, you need to make sure what people are talking about is stuff that's like interesting. Like, I know this sounds, it's easier to get people watch when they say, oh, it's a story about these three actors in Hollywood and it somehow incorporates the movie. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think, it's like one of the reasons I think Pulp Fiction, besides the movie's incredible, you're dealing with these, gangsters and characters that you want to spend time with.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I go by the same idea, I think, from a slightly different road, which is when I'm working on something, I want to feel that it's almost maximalist in the world that you're in, that the world you're in is detailed enough where you feel like you could walk into it and there would actually be something on that counter, and everything everybody talks about is really based on something that those characters would say in that moment and are part of their environment in that way. And actors are often, so much of the job is filling in the environment that you're playing in and getting into, well, what's this time period? What would people be wearing? Who would their heroes be? Whatever the case may be. And so from a writing perspective, things feel more alive when they've been lived in at this level of depth, and you can kind of feel it, I think, on a different level. So that's the aspiration. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time. I just watched a documentary about Robert Caro, who wrote the Lyndon Johnson biographies, and he would go to the South and live where Lyndon Johnson lived so that he could bring that to life with rich, vivid detail. And I think that everybody, given that, every part of life and every human being given that level of attention and detail, becomes vivid and fascinating, I think. So that's the standard I'm trying to hold myself to my own chagrin.
We are hopefully approaching the end of the actors' strike. God willing, it's going to be today or soon. What has it been like for you the last few months? And are you just like dying to work again? I'm very fortunate. It's been very sad. It's very sad to be in this city. It's very sad to see restaurants close. It's very sad to talk to people who are out of work and are, and for whom this has stalled. There's a lot of people who were, like I'm very lucky, and I had a few movies come out this year during this time, and I have a movie I'm going to do after this, and it's kind of
has stalled things, but it hasn't killed things. And there's a lot of people for whom this has maybe meant that this isn't the career they can have anymore. Not to mention the other industries in Los Angeles in particular that are dependent on the entertainment industry. I mean, so it's been that kind of heavy feeling of stalled, not nearly as bad as COVID, but almost a little reminiscent of those times where things are in this holding pattern. We're all waiting for this thing. But I'm really glad these conversations are being had now, because if not now, then when? And so for me, it's been, that, and then I've been trying to take advantage of the opportunity to write and develop as much as I can, and do my I have a theater space. That's where I'm at right now, that I'm putting together to start doing plays and events.
Basically, you've been using all the time for other things.
Yeah, I haven't been using it as much during the pandemic, like publicly, but I'm setting it up, and we're doing some of the things, all the logistics of getting it set up so we can start doing our first plays next year. Here, I'll show you. This is the building. You're on Substation in Cypress Park. So we're getting that together to start as kind of an off-Broadway house style theater in LA, and then have, a series of dinners, movie nights, little concerts, lectures, things like that in between.
A, that sounds awesome. B, thanks. Bringing more culture to LA, thumbs up. And obviously, when you start doing this, please let me know so I can help you promote.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I do want to ask you one thing. I read, of course, this could be wrong, that when you were much younger, basically Steven Spielberg was the one who sort of helped you get noticed, like slash. Yeah. And so can you sort of, for people that don't know, can you sort of share that story?
Sure. I was making little movies with my friends on the weekends, and like the kind of thing that would be put on YouTube now, in a silly way. And I made one that was shown at a girl that I was friends with, bat mitzvah. And it was on a little screen on the side. It wasn't even really screened. It was just like on a loop somewhere. And this girl was friends with Steven Spielberg's daughter. And I was 14. Steven was at the bat mitzvah as a result, and saw me on this little video and thought that I was funny. And we got a call from DreamWorks, my mom and I, like a week or so later, and brought in to meet Leslie Feldman, who's still a really close friend. I had dinner with her last week, to have a meeting about my being an actor. And so he did this, and as a result, I was able to get an agent, and it started my entire career, which was just, an amazing thing for him to do.
I guess I have to ask you, so what do you get him for his birthday every year for changing your life?
Well, now I am really questioning my decisions. I've never got him anything. I'm not really close with him. I've only talked to him.
I'm teasing.
But you're right. I should certainly. I've written him letters and stuff in the past, thanking him as an adult. I talked to him. Amblin produced Brave New World, which was a series I did a few years ago, and I thanked him around that time. But you're smart. I should get something.
I mean, it can't hurt to send him a card, because he has all the money. Yeah. Like, there's nothing you can buy him that he can't buy
That's
himself.
True. Right.
I think it's the personal thing, like a personal note or a personal card.
Yes.
That basically says, thank you for changing my life.
Yeah, exactly. That I've done. That I have sent to him. I'm sending him a note today, actually, because I sent him Shadow Brother Sunday. And I'm going to send a note to that along after.
By the way, no pressure. Changed my life. Maybe you have 15 minutes.
Exactly.
So I'm basically done. But who did you actually trust for honest feedback before you locked the movie?
Great question.
You know what I mean?
Great question. Yeah. Well, especially because I'm acting in it.
Exactly.
I was at Pixar a few years back and kind of got a tour and their process. And I've always believed in this, but that was very inspirational for this too. And I have basically a brain trust of about 10 to 12 people that I check in with at every step of every process. You know, growing up in the inspiration of Coppola, you know, you think about him and Spielberg and Scorsese and De Palma and that George Lucas, this group, it's not like six geniuses walked into a room and happened to meet each other. They made each other better. They pushed each other, their thinking, their conversations. Brian Eno has this, I think it's called scenius, this idea that it's like genius through a scene of people. And so I really leaned on these 12 people. It's a combination of writers and some actors and directors for the script. And then what we did was had a table read at this space at Huron with a bunch of really good actors. And we recorded the table read. And I had friends of mine come listen to that table read. Then we sat in the back here and they gave me notes on it. Then we took the table read and I drew storyboards and did an animatic, basically the way Pixar does, where it's an animated version of the movie with the storyboards with the table read underneath it. So it's a really crude animated version of the whole film. Screened it here with the same group, sat out in the back, had them beat the shit out of me on all the notes of what they thought should be different with that. So by the time I'm filming, we've road tested the film as much as humanly possible, because that seemed to be the key to Pixar's incredible batting average was you can test things before you're just on. Most movies, you write a thing, then you're on set and everybody, you're hemorrhaging money and you're just hoping it works. And so that level of preparation was really useful. I got some of that inspiration from the Coen brothers, who storyboard extensively. And, you know, when you show up on set, you have in your trailer the storyboards. So then I edited the film and did a screening of it. Another group of people gave me notes on it. And then sending it out to people. So very fortunate to have that community of people. And it was so instrumental in like, if you saw the version of the movie that it started as opposed to where it got, it made an enormous difference.
Yeah, this explains why I enjoyed this short so much, because you spent a crazy amount of time, like, you know, rehearsing every aspect of this thing, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Most people, I've spoken to an awful lot of people in Hollywood. Most people do not spend this much time fine tuning something.
Yeah, it's just my, you know, somewhat temperament, somewhat a belief system. And then when we did the film, we did 4 days of rehearsal. Me and Nick Robinson, where we were, and Lisa Edelstein was there for most of it too. And then Nick Searcy came in at the end. We did like improvisations of our childhood. You know, moments where where I'm 15 and he's 12 and I'm showing him my music and talking about how I'm going to be a famous musician, or he's calling me from camp because he's scared, or the day our dad fell off the wagon and our mom's trying to hide it from us. And we did all these improvisations to try to get the feeling in our bones of what this family has lived through, so that it would speak with a sort of different resonance when we talked inside the film itself.
I could ask you a million other things, but I'm going to stop there and say, really, congratulations. And I'm really looking forward to seeing your feature. And I hope people can watch the short soon.
Thank you so much. Good to see you.